My name's Mark Kent. I'm the great-grandson of Narcisse Kent. This is my wife, Pauline, who's hiding right now. And quite a few years ago, we did a play, and I want to give you a basis on what drove us to do this. We did a play, and I was asked to build some set models for the play. So what I did was the yellow buildings you see behind with the brown windows, I built those as play stunts. So about six or 8 weeks ago, my brother called me up, and he said, Mark, he goes, you got to come get these models or we're going to burn them. And I said, okay, no, that's not going to happen. I didn't put a whole bunch of time into them, but I thought, why not? I'll go pick them up. So anyways, I went back and I brought them home, and I thought, I could build a house. And then I built another, and then after the third one, it just kind of turned into a big blur. So what I wanted to do, though, is recreate St. Joseph as it was in 1900. So in 1900, which was really the heyday of St. Joseph, this is when it was first getting started, things were happening. In 1900, my great-grandfather drew up the town plan of St. Joseph, Ontario, okay? And as you can see, it's a lot different than what you guys know it to be today. And literally 1,000 lots in there, right? It was a city plan. He put that entire city plan in his wife Josephine's name, and then these were the investors of the St. Joseph Land and Manufacturing Company there, as you can see on the right-hand side. So this is the original sepia, and a lot of this is how we located the houses. But also I've grown up in this area, and I've heard the stories from when I was 8 years old, little boy, about where they were and what they were and why they did what they did. So I will begin the tour here. And it's a little bit out of order, but I'll begin it here anyways. So this is La Maison Charette, and the reason why we use the La Maison Charette is because this was a French settlement, and I am proud of my French heritage. So it was something I wanted to do, was to show that this was, a French little community. This little St. Joseph sign here, this is my dad is in the picture, right there, the little boy. And this picture was taken, you're in St. Joseph, drive slowly. So if you can imagine, it was just basically my grandfather bought this town. He bought the farmland, he developed this, it was off of an original plan, Johnson Mills. Johnson Mills didn't work out. He started with St. Joseph. Here we are today. So La Maison Charette was another family from the old, and they lived up the highway, east side. Then we get to La Maison Moss. This one's a little more interesting. La Maison Moss, of course, is Ozanam Moss. He shortened it to Jim. Thank you for doing that for us. And Jim Moss and his wife Mabel had 21 children. They were the largest family in Canada. And these pictures that you see taken here, these were pictures taken when Queen Elizabeth and the Pope all recognized the size of their family, and they had these pictures taken. What's interesting about the Moss family and their 21 kids, they lived in the smallest house in St. Joseph. I talked to my dad dated number 20, Monica, and she used to say that they used to have to sleep 4 across in every bed, and that's how they ended up having enough room for everybody. On this side, on my right-hand side, you're going to see the Routhier house. The Routhier house was Dr. Routhier. Dr. Routhier was also the president of the Great Lakes and Atlantic Power and Canal Company. My great-grandfather, Narcisse, never held the title other than the secretary for any of the companies. Routhier was the president, also the resident doctor. He lived here as well. Now, as Narcisse developed St. Joseph, the very first thing he had to do was bring in an establishment that they could have recreation at. So he moved by team and horse the Queen's Hotel from up north by the church, and he moved it down here. They named it the Queen's Hotel. It was ran by a guy by the name of Valley, and hence they named Highway 21 was called Valley Street at one time.
So where was that?
That hotel was right there at Lazy Boy. The Moss House was just past those trees over there. So he started developing the Balmoral Hotel. The contents of the Balmoral Hotel came from another Balmoral Hotel in Montreal. He bought the contents, he moved them down here, he built the hotel. The hotel was started, and as you can see by the the advertisement. It used to have, it was supposed to have a couple of cupolas. The cupolas never made it on it. This was the status that it got to right here. And there was a handful of rooms that were finished. However, it was never open to the public. It was only finished to a point where you could bring in investors and have meetings and so forth in there. St. Joseph Land and Improvement Company, manufacturing company, corporate Montreal 3. You can see this now. A lot of these models we built through photos. As you can see, I've got photos by most of the models, or some of them. And this particular, we know that the hotel was located there because it's actually in the reflection of the picture, which is interesting. And given the age of that photo, and I mean, it's not like somebody had an iPhone. This was so primitive, the cameras back then, that is actually an impressive photo. And then again, you'll see the pictures are kind of laid out relative of where they were taken in St. Joseph. The one around the corner shows this. So as we move north, you're going to see over here, this is Bissonnette Block. Bissonnette's were good friends to the Cantons, investors as well. They were known for clothing stores in Montreal. They moved to St. Joseph. They had their own little retail store here. They also built their home, and they also got the name Bissonnette Street, or Avenue. The Bissonnette House, they also started manufacturing pipe organs, and this organ factory is still there, as is the ice house. Now, this whole replica, if you remember the picture at the beginning, it shows you an aerial shot. Somebody stood on top of the northeast corner of the hotel, right here, and they took an aerial shot this way. So people will always ask, were all those houses there? And yes, they were. These houses were all behind the red brick house. And what you have here is they didn't have streets going to those houses. They just had boardwalks. So I've replicated the boardwalks, and you can see a picture of the Jeffrey brothers on the boardwalk right there with the houses in behind them. Now this particular house here is called the Reynolds House. And there's a picture of Narcisse and some of his friends in front of the Reynolds House. That's how I know it was the Reynolds House. And then you get to La Maison Comté. And this house here was Narcisse's house. This is where Narcisse and Josephine, it's the red brick house. You see, see through the trees. And then there used to be a water tower that was adjacent to it. So I've replicated the water tower, and we put the St. Joseph on it just for the fun of it. Just to, I think it looks kind of neat, the water tower with the name on it. And then this is a random Victorian house that I can't put a name to it, but we put it there because I know there was a big house there. As we're going to move north, you'll see that La Maison d'Ennemi. Now, the significance in this house, this is Raymond Dennemy's house. Prior to it being Raymond Dennemy's house, it was Pierre Canton's house. Pierre Canton, and this is the birthplace of Narcisse Canton. And then as you went further along, La Maison Laporte, down the highway, still in the family, Phil and Patty Laporte.
How far north were you?
Well, these were very far north, and if I wanted to put them exactly where they belong, they'd be on the other side of the ravine.
Okay.
I thought that'd be a little challenging. So we decided to keep them on this side of the ravine. You're welcome. So as we go along here, hey, how are you? How you doing? Okay, that's good. Yeah. So again, we're talking about the Bissonnette House. The Bissonnette House, the Bissonnettes decided it was time for them to go back to Montreal. They gave this house to my grandparents, Napoleon and Valerie Cannon. They had their 12 children in this house, and Napoleon would do all kinds of different things. Napoleon was known as the keeper of St. Joseph. So Narcisse and his oldest son, John, were always busy. They were in Montreal, they were in Chicago, they were in New York. They were all over the place promoting the idea of the Seaway. Napoleon was left in St. Joseph to keep things afloat. Keep the buildings up to speed, keep things in order in the community. So we always called him the keeper of St. Joseph. So while in St. Joseph, Brother Andre of Montreal, Brother Andre came here in 3 visits, 17, 20, and 22. In a 1917 visit, Brother Andre walked from this house with my grandfather and drove a pipe in this piece of land right here, where you see the statue. And he told my grandfather, I want a statue of St. Joseph right here. And if you can imagine in 1917, all of this was here, and Brother Andre picked probably the most prime spot in St. Joseph. And he claimed it as, for St. Joseph. So my grandfather, very devout Catholic, very good friend of Brother Andre, said, you know what, I'm going to make that happen for you one day. Napoleon Sr. did not get it done, but his son, my Uncle Nab, in 1975, with the help of Tony Ford, acquired the statue from the seminary, and it was in 1975 that the Cantons donated this piece of property to the municipality for parkland. So as we come along here, I replicated the wine factory. I call it the wine factory because that's what I was always told it was. Little did I know it was also the Dominion Specialty Manufacturing Company and a couple of other different things. And they would produce hair curlers, bobby pins, all kinds of things in this factory. And then what you have here is the men who built St. Joseph right here, and this is taken in front of this side of the building. And I love this picture for the hats. Every guy in there is wearing a nice hat. So as you come across here, this is what the Cantons called the big block of Block A. Block A was where the hotel was. It was where a lot of the manufacturing and other things were. This is the Campbell General Store. Again, I was telling you about Eric Campbell at Vector. His grandparents, George and his brothers, were living in St. Joseph at the time, investing and building, and they had a few houses as well. Campbell General Store was theirs. And then as you see the big block, we had a carriage factory, which I replicated here. And then we also had the blacksmith shop, which I've replicated here. And you can see where we ran out of time for painting bottles. This was the post office, the St. Joseph Post Office. But prior to being the St. Joseph Post Office, it was actually the Johnson Mill Post Office. It was great place here. That's how I kind of knew it was there. So as we walk along here towards the west, this is John Diddy lives in this house just up the street, and it's a residence. But before it was a residence, and it used to have a barn door in the end, and they actually ended up putting a picture window in it. This was built on around 1914. The Cantons decided that it might be a good idea to get into racehorses. Not a good idea. If you don't know, there you go, John. If you don't know enough about racehorses, you should just stay on. But anyways, doesn't matter. They got into it. Napoleon, it was always his dream to have a stockyard. He loved that life, so his dad helped him get into business in the stockyard business. This house was built as kind of a house to show and tell the horses. There used to be a lot of famous pictures of a lot of pictures of horses in there, and you would do your negotiating for breeding fees inside that building. Probably over a brandy or two. However, whatever worked. This was the barn that went with this, and this was the stockyard, and I built the stables that you can see over here.
So that would have been back in here?
Just where he says, right in behind here. In fact, a piece or a portion of the foundation is just out there, right? So as we walk to the west, we run into Georgina Street, which runs along the lake, okay? And then we come in and we see the fishery. The fishery used to be down on the lake, and at first it was the George Grisham fishery. It turned into the St. Joseph fishery. It turned into the Canton fishery. It went to Stanley Smith and became Stanley fishery. And right around 1903, Napoleon started getting pressure to say, okay, when are the ships going to come? When are we going to start seeing shipping in St. Joseph? So he petitioned the government, and the government came and built the St. Joseph Wharf. So the wharf was built pretty primitive, if you think about it. And just like you see how I built it here, they're 28 foot by 28 foot cribbage. They were simply floated out into the lake in a line, sunk with rocks, and then built on top of, right? So that they built it in 1903. Lake Huron spit it back out and said no thank you. And what ended up happening is they built it again. It's the first before. Second design lasted until about 1920, and then it probably ended up with chimneys. However, it lasted until 1920. I put the Wexford at the end of the dock. Don't think the Wexford ever really came here. However, it's a nice thought. The Julia Larson did make a lot of stuff. The Julia Larson was the Goderich, and it would bring everything from supplies to gasoline. And this is where I asked my resident expert on the Wexford to step in. And this is Pat Rowe. Pat's a member of our society as well, our historical society. And she did a lot of research on the Wexford, and this is about where my voice gives out, so I let Pat take on. Your voice is probably giving out just talking about the Wexford as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's very
Appreciate that.
interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, first, do you live around here?
We have a cottage just up behind Hessenland in Copper's Cove.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you've been in the area.
Yeah, for just about 30 years now. 28, I guess, yeah. No, no, I don't think so.
What do you know about the big storm?
I've heard of
about
it, yeah.
I don't know a whole lot of details. Okay. Well, 100 years ago or more, shipping in the Great Lakes was way bigger than it is now. And it was very important to the development of Canada.
Yeah, that one's important.
Because we didn't have airplanes and they didn't have roads. And the railway, the Trans-Canada Railway wasn't built way back then. And so first sailing ships and then later on freighters. One historian said that there were more people asleep on
Yeah, oh yeah.
ships